Alright, hey, wanted to do a quick update on the status of this TouchMetal board project. So one thing I didn't realize, and I think a lot of other people don't realize, is that in general you can't just build an electronic device and start selling it. It's actually legally not allowed in the United States and a number of other countries because of the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. So the idea is if you have a device with any kind of clock inside, anything more than just a few kilohertz, so basically anything with any sort of microprocessor or microcontroller, it's going to generate electromagnetic noise, right? Maxwell told us this. And anything that generates noise needs to be certified as being compliant with FCC regulations concerning how much noise it can generate. This apparently goes back to the 90s when arcade games started interfering with emergency radio communications. And so there's limits on how much noise a device can emit at certain frequencies, and you have to make sure that you've tested your device and you assert that it conforms to the requirements. So this is governed in the U.S. by the FCC, and you can go through their equipment authorization information. This device is considered an unintentional radiator. It's not something that's deliberately using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or something like that. It's simply radiating electromagnetic signals because it's got a clock, right? It's got signals that are changing, and changing electric field generates a magnetic field, and so on. So, and if your clock, like I say, if it's just more than a few kilohertz, you have to go through this testing process. So fortunately, you don't need to actually register your device with the FCC in some cases, including the case of this TouchMetal board. I can fill out what's called a supplier's declaration of conformity, which says that I have had this device tested and it's been shown to conform to the required limits. But you can't just state that. You actually have to do the testing, and if you haven't done the testing and you claim you have, or if you try to market a device or use a device in more than just a small number without going through this process, it's technically illegal. There can be fines or worse for that. So how do you get a device tested? So I looked around and I was able to find a lab not too far from here in Hillsboro. It's called EMI, Electromagnetic Investigations, and they're pretty close. They were about 20-30 miles away, and I talked to the owner, and he gave me a date about 2 weeks in the future from when I contacted him to come out and have the TouchMetal board tested for compliance. So it's tested inside a chamber, and all of this material on the walls is material that absorbs electromagnetic radiation. So theoretically you don't get bounces off the walls or the ceilings as something emits. So it's called an anechoic chamber. And all the walls are covered with this except the floor. The floor will bounce the signals. And the board, you can see it right here, sits on this pedestal, and this pedestal can turn 360 degrees, so it'll sit in different orientations. I was powering it with a laptop, and then everything else, comes off the pedestal during the test. So that's the board being tested. That's another view of the chamber. So everything, including the ceiling, is covered. And this is an antenna, and it will change in height from, I think, 1 meter to 4 meters off the ground as the pedestal rotates, and so it goes through different orientations. And the whole testing process takes a few hours, and while it's running, there's equipment that's recording what's being received by the antenna at different frequencies. You get a graph of that, and you compare it to the target graph, and you make sure that none of the frequencies are being emitted at higher than the allowed maximum. So there's another view of the chamber. It's a pretty big room. If you've ever been in one of these, it also feels really weird because it's also pretty acoustically absorbing, so there's no echoes, and you get kind of this negative pressure in your eardrum. Normally sound is bouncing and hitting our ears, and when you take that away, you actually feel like the absence of pressure. It's a pretty freaky sensation. I used to work in chambers like this back in DC, and you get used to it after a while, but it's surprising at first. So so we put the board in here and ran it through its paces, um, and it did great. Had three tests that I was doing. One where it was just free running a program, another where we had a button depressed because that changes some of the electrical characteristics, and the third one where we upload to memory from the laptop. That was the only one that that came in slightly high. We moved the laptop off the platform, and that helped. And then we put a ferrite core on the USB cable. We first put it next to the board. That helped more, and then we put it next to the laptop, and that helped even more, and that was enough of a reduction to bring the whole thing in spec. So apparently connected to the board, this USB cable is acting a bit like an antenna, but throwing a ferrite core on here brings it back in compliance. So I'll have to be supplying a cord with a bead attached to it with the TouchMetal board. And got a free coffee cup out of it too. So EMI was a super great place to work with. They were really friendly. I'd never done anything like this before, obviously, and they were fine with explaining to me what was going on, answering questions, and made the whole process not just painless but pretty pleasant. And everything worked out, so the board is in compliance. So I'm ready to start selling these. Going to get some printed circuit boards manufactured. I've got all the parts and pieces, and I'll go ahead and open up a store on Tindy and put some links to that from the website, and then we'll see if anybody wants to buy any of these. So that's the current status. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye.